Greetings to all students of human history. I am Professor Harishandra Higginsbottom, communicating with you from the year 9595 across the temporospatial simultaneity in the mind of the Omnimater. Today we examine what 21st century scholars would call their near future, but what we know as the pivotal Cascade era, the period that fundamentally reshaped human civilization. Like many civilization-altering events, it began not with a bang but with a whimper, a bureaucratic decision. In early 2025, the United States of America, then Earth's wealthiest nation and largest contributor to global health infrastructure, made what appeared to be a simple budgetary adjustment. They withdrew significant funding from international health organizations, research initiatives, and disease prevention programs. Few understood at the time how this decision would interact with the already accelerating climate crisis. Contemporary observers called it taking the foot off two brakes simultaneously as humanity raced toward a cliff. They were, if anything, understating the danger. The first systems to fail were the early warning networks, the planetary immune system, so to speak. By 2027, global disease surveillance capacity had decreased by 64%. New outbreaks that once would have been contained within days now spread for weeks or months before detection. The Ebola resurgence of 2028 provided an early warning. A novel strain emerged in the expanded tropical zone of former Kenya. In previous decades, it would have been detected within days. Instead, it spread through 3 climate refugee settlements before being identified. By then, secondary outbreaks had occurred in 12 countries. This was merely the herald of what was to come. As climate zones shifted, disease vectors followed. Mosquitoes carrying dengue, Zika, and malaria established themselves in regions where humans had no acquired immunity or institutional knowledge for prevention. The Anopheles advance, as it came to be known, brought malaria to the American South, Southern Europe, and Northern China, regions where it had been absent for generations. Without sustained prevention programs, mortality rates reached levels not seen since the 19th century. What our ancestors failed to fully appreciate was that mosquitoes were merely the most visible disease vectors. Ticks carrying novel pathogens thrived in warming forests. Waterborne diseases exploded with changing precipitation patterns. The infrastructure that might have addressed these challenges had been dismantled years earlier. Perhaps most consequential was what emerged from the rapidly thawing permafrost. In 2031, the first cases of what would become known as Arctic hemorrhagic fever appeared in northern research stations. The pathogen had been preserved in ice for approximately 48,000 years. It was unlike anything in our medical records, a virus that combined high transmissibility with a lengthy asymptomatic period and severe hemorrhagic symptoms. Modern historians identify this as the beginning of the Great Melt proper, the point at which multiple crises began reinforcing each other beyond any hope of containment. Without robust international coordination or adequate funding for rapid vaccine development, AHF spread along trade and travel routes. The death toll reached into the billions before a consortium of private research entities developed an effective treatment, too late for many regions. By the mid-2030s, what remained of international cooperation had largely collapsed. Nations hoarded medical information and supplies. Borders sealed against climate refugees now banned all travel. Global trade, already strained by climate disruptions, contracted by 60%. The remaining global health organizations, operating on skeletal budgets, could only document the unfolding catastrophe. Their recommendations went unheeded as nations turned inward, prioritizing their own populations, a rational response at the individual level that proved catastrophic collectively. The 2037 concurrent crises, simultaneous outbreaks of respiratory, vector-borne, and foodborne illnesses, overwhelmed what remained of global response capability. This marked the effective end of coordinated international public health, as it had existed for nearly a century. humanity began what we now call the Great Retreat, the abandonment of regions that had become effectively uninhabitable due to either direct climate impacts or uncontrollable disease burden. Tropical and subtropical regions, once home to billions, saw mass evacuations. Disease refugees joined climate refugees in vast migrations toward the poles and higher elevations. These movements themselves accelerated pathogen spread, creating new epicenters of disease. The remnants of nations consolidated around defendable territories with more stable climates. The historical record shows over 40% of Earth's habitable land was effectively abandoned during this period, not due to uninhabitability itself, but to the inability to maintain health security. The period from approximately 2050 to 2090 is poorly documented in our archives. We know global population declined by an estimated 88%. Technological civilization fragmented into isolated pockets. Knowledge preservation became a primary concern among academic enclaves as people fought over what facts were real and what were fake. What's remarkable is not that humanity experienced this catastrophic dieback, but that some threads of global civilization persisted at all. The scientific communities that had warned of these outcomes now focused on preserving knowledge for future recovery. In isolated regions that had for one reason or another been spared the global contagion, pockets of life were sustained or in some cases revived. One such area was on the risen continent of Antarctica, which rose out of the sea once it was released from under the crushing weight of billions and trillions of tons of ice, and which became the highland refuge known as the Way Up. Perhaps most significantly, the realization that Earth itself had become an unpredictable host gave rise to technological visionaries, whom we might call false prophets, who advocated the settlement of Planet B. Another Earth that humans could find or terraform as a refuge from the destroyed home planet. This mania to find another planet to replace the one we had ruined accelerated the seeking of off-Earth habitats, first on the Moon, then Mars, and eventually throughout the solar system. But for various reasons, all these visions proved impossible to achieve. In the end, as humanity sunk further into barbarism in the grip of the corporate oligarchy and its ethic of profit above all else, even in the face of the biological insecurity of a warming planet whose ecology had been fundamentally disrupted. By the early 22nd century, the survivors had developed new approaches to resilience, hermetically sealed habitats or dome cities. Dystopian biodomes, sealed off from the outside world, became a grim necessity for survival in the harsh new reality. In the face of the rampant spread of the Zika virus, the Monsanto Corporation undertook a worldwide program of genetic engineering for disease resistance. This included the purposeful eradication and planned extinction of all other life forms on Earth. The goal was to prevent species interaction and zoonotic jumps. Ultimately, they even resorted to artificial reproduction of humans themselves. Human babies, now grown in giant test tubes, represented the future of humanity in this engineered world. What lessons can we draw from this catastrophic period? Perhaps the most important is the danger of what the ancients called false economy, the illusion of saving resources by dismantling preventative systems. The funding withdrawn from global health in the 2020s amounted to less than 0.1% of global GDP at the time. The eventual cost in lives, knowledge, and civilization's trajectory was incalculable. Today, Earth remains only partially reoccupied. Our terraforming efforts continue, but many regions still harbor pathogens for which we have no immunity or effective treatments. In our diminished future, we cling to survival in the domed cities of the down below and in a few refugees that survived the times of the Great Melt and the Ziz Plague. But our hold on life is tenuous. The Monsanto Corporation still maintains the Church of the Prophet as the only truth and threatens even what little life remains on Earth. There are a few refugees of life, The history of one of them is told in the Chronicles of the Future Foretold, The Girl Who Rode the Unicorn, which we have been able to provide to you. Consider it a history of the future and a prophecy of the time to come. But remember, time is always being rewritten, and you have it in your power to take this history as a warning and to change the future and to save our shared Mother Earth.